The time has come for the Lanturn PvP IV deep dive. With Surf added to Lanturn's move pool, Lanturn is now a big meta threat in Pokemon Go once again. It's been a couple years. Lanturn is back in the scene. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about the most important stat checks and the best PvP IVs for Lanturn in Great League PvP. I'll also be highlighting the minimum stat checks that you're going to want to be aware of for Lanturn in the Ultra League as well. In this video, I'm going to be going over the true stats of a Pokemon and the breakpoints relative to those stats. So if you're not too familiar with that, or if at any point in time in this video you're kind of confused what I'm talking about, I highly recommend checking out my PvP IVs simplified video, link up above and in the description, so you can get your feet wet before you dive off into the deep end here. And then, as per usual with these videos, I'm going to be throwing a lot of different numbers and matchup situations at you. If you want to reference any of this material in a text-based format and get some, even deeper, grittier details on the situation, link in the description to my article on GamePress, the Lanturn PvP IV Deep Dive. And without further ado, let's get into Lanturn. Before we talk about the IVs, let's talk about Lanturn's moveset. Water Gun or Spark. When it comes down to it, Water Gun and Spark are both kind of subpar attacks overall. Water Gun has a little bit better damage going on. Spark has a bit better energy gains going on. So you'd think Spark would be the move of choice. But because they're both in this kind of mediocre-ish kind of situation, I feel like the type of damage that you're dealing is more relevant than the fast move itself, if that makes sense. And I feel like more often than not, especially in the current state of the game, Lanturn is probably going to prefer using water type damage with the Water Gun. Of course, Spark is pretty good too, but given the way things are, I'm kind of on Team Water Gun here. When it comes to the deep dive in particular, there aren't really a lot of attack breakpoints for optimal Lanturns, so the defense breakpoints and bulk checks I talk about are going to apply to both Water Gun and Spark. Of course, if there are key differences between the two moves, I'll try to make that very apparent to you guys. So yeah, overall, if you're just using Lanturn, getting your feet wet with it, and you're not following some guru's team, then I'd say go with the Water Gun. But if you feel like you want more electric type damage going on, that's when you whip out the Spark. Water Gun first, then Spark, unless you're following somebody else's team. And here's a table of the 34 IV spreads that meet the minimum stat checks I think you should look for in a Great League Lanturn. This table will be linked in the article on GamePress, which is linked in the description here. And yeah, you can see that there is the rank 1 Lanturn on this list. It's finally happened. Ryan Swag recommending high bulk weights in his deep dives. It's just that the attack breakpoints are just like too far away, and you give up so many matchups in the process of chasing those attack breakpoints where it just didn't make any sense. You kind of want to focus on bulk. Now, even though the rank 1 is on this list, I feel like you kind of want to sort this list by defense here. The higher defense weights give you a lot more potential in a lot of matchups that I'm going to talk about in just a moment here. So yeah, but the minimum stat check that I'm looking at for this PvP IV table overall is going to be 105.5 with 196 HP. And you can thrift on defense as so long as you make up for it in HP at a 1-to-2 defense to HP ratio. So if you've got 104.5 defense, well then you're going to want to have 198 HP to make up for it. And this also works in reverse as well. If you've got higher defense, like 106.5 defense, then you could thrift down to 194 HP. And then when it comes to the thrifting here, I probably wouldn't want to bleed defense too much. Like if you had a little bit of a tiebreaker in your heart which one you're going to go with, I would go with the higher defense rather than the higher HP iteration, just because there are some pretty high-end defense breakpoints that you really want to make sure are very consistent. So to that end, I feel like the best one is going to be the rank 3 or some of the defense splits that have a little bit lower HP for you to meet them. This table is customizable too, so if you want to see those higher defense spreads, you could drop the HP here down to 2, and then I guess so you filter out a lot of the extra stuff, pump up this to 107 defense, and then you can see here you got the even higher defense weights, or I guess these are equivalent aside from the rank 36 here. So yeah, so that's just a way you can use this table. So what's going on with the defense stat? Why do we want such a high defense stat on our Lanturns, and a lot of reasons. One reason is Deoxys defense form, starting at 104.83 defense and then scaling up based on each different attack weight for Deoxys defense form. With the Spark moveset, you can better secure the 0-0 and 1-1 shield scenario, and then you could also better secure the 0-1 and 1-2 shield disadvantage scenarios. So you spend 0 shields, they spend 1 shield, you spend 1 shield, they spend 2 shields with the water gun. Water gun's just a little bit more aggressive, so you get that much more of an advantage against the Deoxys defense form. This is the same situation I paralleled in my Deoxys defense form PvP IV deep dive, and like I said there, if Lanturn has enough defense, it just becomes unchaseable. Like a Deoxys will never get the breakpoint on you if you have like 107.08 defense or higher. This defense is also relevant for Altaria. Against the rank 1 Altaria at least, starting at 105.49, you can now flip that matchup with Spark in the 0-0 shield situation. On top of that, in less even scenarios, clearly you can understand how taking one less Dragon Breath, damage per Dragon Breath from Altaria can really add up in a matchup to help you, get the victory there. Now, of course, this is the rank 1 Altaria, so if you want things to be a little bit more consistent, you're going to need a lot more defense. For example, if Altaria is attack weighted to get an attack breakpoint on Trevenant to flip that matchup, or maybe even Jumpluff or Cresselia, right? Well, then you're going to need at least 107.3 defense to protect yourself from that Altaria there. Yeah, Altaria in today's meta definitely has a lot of reasons to go for a slightly higher attack weight. The attack weight you might want to look for on an Altaria would probably be at least like 103, maybe 103.31, now that we're chasing this Lanturn here, right? But yeah, I just feel bad for everybody that we're just kind of sitting on their laurels with their rank 1 Altarias, specifically Speediest Chief and his 2 rank 1 Altarias. He's got a shiny one and a non-shiny. I feel like in today's meta, a slight attack weight Altaria is definitely the way to go, with all these big threats coming in that just get defense breakpoints on rank 1 Altaria. But enough about Altaria. Let's talk about Azumarill. Yeah, so having 104.19 defense to 105.46 defense can help you against Azumarill securing the 1-2 shield scenario using Water Gun. The 105.46 is based on the slight attack weight highlighted from my Azumarill PvP IV deep dive at the higher end of the attack weight there, just for that extra consistency. Then we got this fun one here. 105.62 is for the Bastiodon, the rank 1 Bastiodon, to better secure the 1-2 shield scenario using the Water Gun, and I think this also applies to some Spark matchups as well. I'd say overall expect to miss this unless you're fighting Caleb Pang himself, because not a lot of people have, the rank 1 XL Bastiodon there. And what I think is kind of goofy about this situation too is that this kind of gives credence to the slight attack weight Bastiodon that I recommended in my Bastiodon PvP IV deep dive, sort of like Altaria, chasing after a Trevenant breakpoint and then also a Sableye breakpoint on top of it. So yeah, that slight attack weight Bastiodon can also do in the rank 1 Lanturn as well. So having a bit higher defense, keep you a little bit more fortified, right? Then dropping a bit lower, but mind you, this is based off the rank 1s. We have Cofagrigus and Runerigus, right, at 102.92, and that's the rank 1. I do expect these Pokemon to be attack weighted, so this is like the bottom defense you're looking at for, min defense purposes, but I expect them to have higher attack weights. And it ended up being pretty relevant for the Runerigus matchups, I've noticed, because it uses the Sand Tomb, which drops your defense, which means it picks up extra Shadow Claw breakpoints, like it accelerates its Shadow Claw damage even faster by getting a breakpoint on you. When I do the Runerigus PvP IV deep dive, I expect this to be a lot more like highlighted there, since I imagine Lanturn is going to be a pain in Runerigus's butt. But yeah, just another reason to want to have that higher defense there. And then there's also Toxicroak. Toxicroak starts at 104.78, and it can secure you the 1-1 shield scenario with both Spark and Water Gun. When it comes to Toxicroak, overall I have always favored the higher attack weights on it just for CMP in the mirror, so it is probably one that you're going to miss out on, but then again, it's like another reason to want to have an even higher defense weight to keep yourself consistent. And then super low defense here. We're looking at 101.32 for Shadow Dragonite and 100.84 for Shadow Venusaur. And I didn't really look into the matchup flips right there. It's just something to be mindful of if you start to thrift on your defense significantly, chasing like a higher attack weight or a higher HP weight. These are the rank 1s, so they will have higher attack weights than this. So try to stay sober when it comes to the defense. Believe in the Swagman. 105.5 is a minimum, but if you can go higher, it's highly recommended to go higher. If you can go higher than the rank 1 defense, like the rank 1's defense, right? Over 106, try to do that. Because anything that's looking to get an attack breakpoint on Lanturn is probably going to be looking there first, and they're not looking at that rank 3 with the even higher defense, if you know what I'm saying. Then when it comes to that minimum HP of 196, that's going to be based on the Umbreon 1-1 shield scenario, the Sableye 1-1 shield scenario, the Vigoroth 1-1 shield scenario, the Galarian Stunfisk 1-0 shield advantage scenario, and the Drapion 1-2 shield disadvantage scenario, all using Water Gun. I didn't find anything like specific for Spark in this range, but overall, if things were to fall out of the 105.5 and 196 minimum, then I started seeing matchup losses across the board. So like stress testing those lower HP and defense weights, against the matrix simulations, I noticed that you probably just want to stick in that range to feel the safest. So if you're chasing a higher defense weight on the Lanturn than the minimum stat checks, then this table encompasses a lot of the higher defense weights, also linked in the Game Press article as well. Now you will notice that there are 53 different options on this table, where the other table only had 34 options. So if these are the even better IVs, why are there even more options compared to the less good ones? Well, for this particular table, I dropped the HP check to 192 so we could capture more of the higher defense weights, which results in some, I guess, bad or less desirable IVs sneaking in. So do keep that 105.5 defense and 196 HP baseline in mind with the 1-to-2 trading ratio there when you're ogling this list. So it's like the first list with the 34 doesn't have all the options because it doesn't feature the defense HP trade. This table has some options that arguably shouldn't be here because it's not accounting for the defense HP trade. It's just the way that these tables, happen, because I can't show the 107.68 defense without the HP being 192. But because I have the HP at 192, then you get less desirable stuff like the 106.26 with the 192. So be cautious when going through these lists. Just keep that ratio in mind. 105.5 defense, 196 HP, and you can trade defense and HP at a 1-to-2 ratio. If it falls out of the ratio, start scratching your chin and getting a little skeptical, is all I'm saying. Alright, so all this defense HP stuff is cute and all, but this is a PvP IV deep dive. We're using Water Gun. There's got to be attack breakpoints, right? And I did find some really cool looking attack breakpoints, but the thing is that they're so high. We're looking at like, 106 to 107 plus attack, that Lanturn loses so much bulk that you start picking up like defense, breakpoints lost against like Shadow Dragonite and stuff like that, which is super bad. You don't want to have that happen. And doing all the different matrix simulations, and I tried looking at higher defense weights, higher HP weights, more balanced stats, I didn't find a formula that really fit nicely for the attack breakpoints. So I think the best way I can kind of frame that situation is the attack breakpoints are like a consolation prize if you are just trying to build a Lanturn, or there's something to keep in mind if you're some super high-end Galaxy Brain 5-head battler that wants to get a little bit of an extra advantage in some specific matchups. But because of how awkward the bulk situation is, I can't really make a PvP IV like table for the attack weights. So if you don't have one of the bulk weighted ones, well then check your stats on, PvPIVs.com, the Go Stadium rank checker. You can use PvPoke.com. You can use Kelky IV. You can use PokeGenie. They will tell you your true stats if you punch in the numbers. And if you don't have the IVs that are the good, well then keep these attack breakpoints in mind. Probably most consistently looking at about 107.48 on the attack stat. I feel the Lickitung one goes a little bit, like we're already going too far, but the Lickitung goes even further beyond. I don't know. It's up to you to decide. Just so your early build Lanturn, your not premium bulk Lanturn, still has some utility down the line when you do replace it with the better bulk Lanturn. So if like the meta shifts, or you're in a limited format, or maybe you're in some high stakes tournament and you really want to have some specific water gun attack breakpoint for some big brain reason there, then you still have that on hand. It's not like your early build is like wasted now. It still has utility in the future, right? At least that's how I approach PvP IVs when I don't get like the specific one that I want. I try to maintain utility with that one with a different stat weight. So yeah, if you think this approach to PvP IVs is crazy, I just talked to Dancing Rob not too long ago, and that guy has 4 different Altaria IV spreads for all the different stat checks that Altaria has been trying to make throughout the years here. So pro level players do happen to have multiple IV spreads to meet different situations. It's just good idea, right? Now moving on to Ultra League Lanturn. In the Ultra League, Lanturn's CP at level 50 is 2357. So this is a best buddy Pokemon, taking that thing all the way up. 15, 15, 15 is the ideal. But let's say you don't have the 15, 15, 15, right? You got a lucky trade with a different IV spread. What are the minimum stats? Like, how low can you go with Lanturn before it becomes a problem? And I noticed that it starts to become a problem when any of the stats hit 13. So 14, 14, 14 is the minimum recommendation. Now, if you got 13 in one of those stats, is it that big of a problem? And I gotta say, it probably isn't. In the grand scheme of things, you do a bajillion different battles. How many times is that 13 IV gonna get in your way? And probably not that often, but it could. It probably will at times. And it's such a big XL investment, a huge Stardust cost, a huge time sink to get the best buddy, that I just feel like if you're gonna build it, try to get the 14, 14, 14 or better, right? You won't have any regrets at the end of the day then. Because if you do end up having like a 12 defense IV, let's say, and you keep losing, a couple matchups over and over and over again, you finally check on pvpoke.com, and lo and behold, it's a defense breakpoint you're missing. That just sucks. Because you spent all that Stardust and all that XL candy. You know what I'm saying? So I'd say 14, 14, 14 or better. If you don't have it, just hold out and it'll pay off a lot more later on, right? Or don't, and suffer the consequences as they arrive. Will they arrive that often? Can't say for sure. Lanturn isn't all that good in the Ultra League right now. Like, it's spicy. It's pretty nice. It's got its own water electric niche going on. But, it's a spicy boy. And you're going to be thrifting on that spice. Are you really losing out on holding out? So that wraps up my thoughts on Lanturn right now in the current state of the game. I feel like Water Gun, once again, is the focus, but Spark has a lot of value too. When it comes to Lanturn and Great League PvP, high bulk, big bulk focus, definitely the way to go. Higher defense, higher than the rank 1's defense, even better. But if you don't have the minimum stat checks talked about in this video, do look into those attack breakpoints, just so your early build, the Lanturn you have right now, that's not the high bulk one, has some utility in the future when you finally do have the high bulk one. It's like, it's not that big of a deal, but it's kind of a big deal. You know what I'm saying? At any rate, if you got questions on this content, of course, comment below, let me know what's up. I'll be happy to help you out. And if you enjoyed this kind of content, you want to see more like it, well, make sure to subscribe to SwagTips. I'd also like to give a special shout out to these Patreon supporters. If you want to support Swagman on Patreon, link in the description. Given just how relevant attack-weighted Altaria's kind of looking here, I might do an Altaria PvP IV deep dive sometime before December. Because, the December Community Day, get Moonblast on it. But don't worry, Altaria will not be distracting me from our one true Lord Dunsparce. Now that I got the big new meta boy out of the way, Lanturn, I can focus on the real meta boy.